Hello and welcome everybody to the episode 3 of the HamRadioConcepts podcast. I am KJ4YZI, Eric, and this has been a little bit of a fun challenge to set this one up. You know, we started this podcast only 2 weekends ago, and I'm learning every day about how to do this, and this one was a great learning experience here, and now I don't know where this is going to go, but we have a few guests on here, and as I said before, if you're new to the podcast, I said for everybody to email me at hamradioconcepts@gmail.com because I do this show. I want to do this show for us, not just for me. I could talk all day long on the radio, but if I can get people all over the place, all over the world to talk to and learn about, and everybody can have their own voice on this podcast, that's what I'm really interested in doing. I am Eric, KJ4YZI. I started with YouTube on HamRadioConcepts and have blossomed into being on most major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, and more. And even if you're listening to this on a podcast, you can also listen to it on traditional AM shortwave, 9.395 megahertz, facing North America and Canada, or North America, 5.950 facing Europe, North Africa, and listen to WRMI on this podcast. So let me introduce who we have here. I got a few emails from people, and I tried to have a mixed bag across the board, and we had quite a bit of audio troubleshooting here to try to get, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people together. The sixth one dropped off. He's got kids. Thanks, Russell. And we had a couple of issues. So here we go. And in the most unprofessional order ever, but the way they're listed on my screen, we have Jeff, KD2SCR. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, this is Jeff, KD2SCR from New Jersey. How you doing?
New Jersey. Very cool. We have Matt, VK2MLB. Go ahead, Matt. Hello.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Matt, VK2MLB, based here in Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, Australia. Cool. We have the one, the only, the other outcast from me, Bob, K6UDA from K6UDA Radio on YouTube. Hello, Bob.
Hey, how you doing? Bob, K6UDA from God's country in Twin Falls, Idaho.
Wow, yes. If you haven't already seen, Bob does have a YouTube channel as well on K6UDA Radio on YouTube. And I have to warn you, because if he doesn't warn you, it's on his email and other places. It's the Ham Radio show your mother warned you about. And I've always loved his brute force approach. If he doesn't like something, he's going to tell you about it, and he's not afraid of your feelings. So it's a pleasure to have you, Bob.
Hey, you know what? This is great to be here with you. Welcome to podcasting, I guess, because I don't know how to do it.
Well, you know, I don't either, Bob. We just determined that now in 1 hour and 11 minutes. We could work the world with a light bulb at 5 watts. Hanging upside down in a tree with a homebrew radio and talk all over the world, but we can't figure out how to get 5 streams of audio at one time without an echo.
Without a big echo, yeah. Hey, you know what? It is what it is, and we'll get through it. And you guys at home, hey, thanks for having us on. We love to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So again, I don't know where this is going, and we're just going to throw it out there. But I'll step again here. We'll go to Jeff, then Matt, and then Bob, and we'll save a couple things here. Give us your story, man. Jeff, we'll start with you. And again, this is your opportunity, man. Your voice is going to be on shortwave and on podcasts. Thank you for being here, Jeff, and giving me the time. And I always hope that every one of these podcast episodes, I can walk away learning something from somebody, and I hope everybody can learn something. It's more than just making a video about a piece of gear. It's connecting with people on ham radio and talking about this, because I've been in ham radio since 2004. I got licensed, and I just love this hobby, and I wanted to shift gears and start the podcast thing. Go ahead, Jeff. Give us some insight. How are you? What are you up to? And go ahead.
Well, I'm doing great here. Thanks very much for asking. So I started my ham radio journey a few years ago. My wife and I got into prepping, believe it or not. We're not like doomsday preppers, but we've got, some food stashed and stuff just in case. You never know. So one day we were talking about it, and I was like, I think I should get into the ham radio thing, because you never know, right? So I went on my onto YouTube, and I searched for ham radio, and up comes Ham Radio Crash Course. And I think that's who I found first, and then got into watching it. And of course, YouTube does their suggestions, and I came across Bob's channel, of course, K6UDA. Watched him a lot. I blame him for a lot of my purchases because I started out with the FTM 400 from one of his reviews. I think I put that in my Jeep. And
Great radio, by the way.
Yes, great radio. And then, of course, I absolutely came across HamRadioConcepts and learned a lot about. I think I bought the Anytone because of one of your reviews. I tried to, because I'm new to it a little bit. I didn't quite know, like what to expect on the radio. So I challenged myself a while back when I first got the license, that is, to try and contact at least one person per day on my way home for work.
Awesome.
I drive up the New Jersey Turnpike, and I would reach a certain part of the turnpike where I could connect to the Ham Radio Club's Yaesu System Fusion repeater, and I get on. I usually talk to somebody in the UK. I think I talked to somebody in Tokyo once. But then, we started working from home, and then it was pretty hard to get back into it. And then the big challenge I've always had with radio is, like, what do you talk to people about besides what radio you're using and what the weather's like?
Oh, that's a great. Allow me to interject there for a second, Jeff. So I get exactly what you're saying. Ham radio can be about anything, and you can talk. I mean, it doesn't have to be talking about radios, but there comes a point where you can go to a certain band and talk about political stuff. Then you can go to a certain band and talk about technical stuff. Then you can go to a certain band and talk to a bunch of people that are contesting with homebrew stuff. And I found myself at the same time struggling to talk about what to talk about. So the first thing I do is I talk about radio stuff, right? And Bob, Matt, what do you guys think about that? What do you talk about?
I have the same problem. I struggle with what the heck you actually say once you're on the air. And obviously, like, talking about radio is an easy place to start because it's something that we've all got in common. To start any sort of contact with, I'm using an IC7300, I'm running X number of watts, and I'm running it into a dipole, is an easy way of getting the conversation started. But after that, it tends to get a little bit difficult. Beyond weather, like particularly if you're making a DX contact where conditions are going to be a lot different from where you are, that's an easy segue. Beyond that, it can be a bit of a struggle, I think. I don't know. Like with any conversation, you've got to learn to sort of how to keep it moving in a direction, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you got to keep an audience entertained or somebody interested in what you're talking about, I guess. And I struggle with that sometimes because unless it's radio, I can't talk about politics. And if they want to talk about politics on 80 meters or 75 meters, fine, I can't do it. But Bob, what would you chime in on this?
Like talking with Matt. Matt's from VK land, and I just find that absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, Matt, I would ask you, what's it like in VK land? What do you guys do? I guess, you go to work and you come home and play on the radio, but, what's the weather like? What's there to do in VK land? What's, just everything, because it's so different. It's halfway around the world for me. So I find it very.
You make a good point, right? Like, I'd love to know what it's like, what day to day is like in any other part of the world. Obviously, you guys in the US, day to day is probably not that much different from us here in VK. But as you say, I do want to hear about it. We always do. We want to know what it's like for our fellow operators around the world.
Yeah, definitely. I find stuff like that, fascinating. I know that there's different license classes that you guys have. Do you guys have like foundation and something else?
Yeah, so we have foundation, standard, and then advanced. Our foundation being the equivalent of your technician, I believe.
Okay.
The licensing for foundation is you get, what do we get? 80, 40, 15, 10, then 2 meter, 70 centimeter. I think that's all we get. Yeah, that's all we get. And obviously 10 watts absolute max. So we're sort of locked into QRP for the beginning of our ham journeys. And then obviously our standard being the next equivalent of your general, I think, opens up a couple more of the HF bands and we go up to 100 watts. And then I think advanced is just your extra, so it's absolutely everything else.
Okay, awesome.
I don't know. Do you guys still have CW mandatory as part of your exams or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, the CW has gone away as far as the FCC is concerned. Now, that's kind of my thing this year is I keep threatening to learn CW because I want to. And I think that's the best way to master something or to even get into it is to want to do it, not because you have to do it. So like right now, I just got this book called Learn Morse Code by a gal named Rachel Mintz, and it uses QR codes and all kinds of stuff. You could get it on Amazon, and if you go to my Amazon, affiliate thing, you could get it. And I'm also testing out this a new device. It's called a DMX40. It's called by a company here in Idaho called PrepCom, and it's a CW decoder, a very good decoder. I mean, I have during the day sat there and listened or watched CW conversations where I am amazed. These guys are putting up just straight up whole QSOs, just like we're talking right now, but they're doing it in CW. And I thought, everything was abbreviated and short, but man, just impressed with that. And I'm just learning this DMX40 right now. I'm going to do a review. I'm going to do all that stuff, but I'm learning it right now. But that's kind of my thing this year is I want to at least get to the point in CW where I can carry out at least a small QSO with other people and be able to copy call signs. And that's one of my real big downfalls is copying call signs.
That's my biggest downfall with CW at all is just decoding. And if you're just tuning in, the echo is coming from Bob K6UDA and his equipment.
Wow! Way to throw me under the bus. Let me turn the outboard monitor down. I'll turn my headphones up, and is that any better?
Yeah, actually it is. But, with this audio program, when I talk now, I can see my audio coming up on your audio box. But if, so I guess they call it mix sense or negative mix. But see, it's going down. You're doing something that's going down, I think. But anyways, if you're just tuning in, we have a whole different type of episode here. And you may be listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, iHeartRadio Podcast, Google Podcasts, Deezer's Podchaser, Tel Aviv, or whatever that one's called, G-Evolve. There's a whole bunch of podcast platforms that I didn't even know about, and I'm late to the party. So they're out there, and you just have to look it up. And we have Jeff, KD2SCR, we're going to get back to here in a second. We have Matt, VK2MLB from Sydney, Australia, and Bob, K6UDA from K6UDA Radio on YouTube, and I am KJ4YZI from HamRadioConcepts. And if you are listening on shortwave, please drop a note to HamRadioConcepts@gmail.com. and give me a signal report. I've asked for this before. I'm making a map on the wall, and I want to have a pin for every person that reports a signal. If you've already reported one and you've been listening since the first episode, you don't need to do it again. Maybe a once-a-month reminder would be cool, and I'll say, oh, I already got you. But I want to have a whole pin board on all these who's listening. 9.395 megahertz facing North America from WRMI in Okeechobee, and 5.950 facing North Africa and Europe. And shortwave is, I have actually more people listening on shortwave than podcast, I believe. So thanks for tuning in and listening. And this is a different one. It's just like a round table about whatever we want. The negative feedback came in recently, Bob, and the guy said, I listened to your first episode, I listened to your second, and either give it up or get a guest because you suck by yourself. So,
I strongly disagree. I listened to that episode this morning on my way into work, and I reckon that was some of your best content, Eric.
Really? I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Well, Jeff...
Well, maybe I'm just being encouraging, but it was good.
So back to Jeff, and Bob, you can mute yourself because your echo is just coming back in. So if you want to hear more of Bob's echo, send an email to hamradioconcepts@gmail.com. Oh, that was a joke. I love picking on Bob. Jeff, so what about Morse code for you? I mean, you said you were recently newer to ham radio. Have you thought about learning Morse code? Does it interest you? Have you ever tuned down there and listened to Morse code on those bands?
I have actually taken a Morse code class with the ham radio club I'm a member of. I didn't really complete the class, however, but one of the things that the instructor was talking about was thinking about Morse code as music instead of trying to pick out each individual letter. And I was able to pick out some words when during the class, and I don't really have a radio to probably get down to those frequencies, but it was pretty interesting, and I was able to keep up. I not too fast, but it was an interesting thing to learn. I think maybe if I were to go for my general, I might get back into it, but I was just looking at the DMX 40 and it looks pretty cool from Prepcom. And yeah, so one of the other things I was actually just thinking about was that I like to sit at home listening on my DMR radio on the Central Jersey room. Maybe I would be better served if I were to pick, like, let's say an Australian room, or a play, you know what I mean, so, or maybe a room in Tokyo, or a room that's in where I'm more apt to find people who are going to be different and have a different something to talk about. Like, wow, you live in Australia? Wow, what's it like? Besides the weather, of course.
That's interesting you say that, because when back in the day, I'm not sure if you've heard of Echolink or used Echolink, but back in the day with Echolink, I mean, it's still there, it's still usable. But when I was first licensed and I was in the Echolink 2006, 2007, I actually had an Echolink node at my house, which was on Simplex RF. And I had that thing programmed. I don't even remember doing it. I had that thing programmed where it would give weather alerts. If there was a severe thunderstorm coming, that thing would broadcast out, give weather alerts, Skywarn, the time of the day with the cuckoo clock, all kinds of stuff. But regular Echolink as an app, I did that same thing, Jeff. I used to go into conferences. They had like repeaters, simplex nodes, users just on a phone or a computer, and then conferences, which was like what nowadays you'd call on DMR, like a reflector, right? So I would check into these conferences that were in different parts of the world, and nobody, a lot of people can see on the screen that you checked in, but nobody really acknowledges you. It's just everybody, it's a free-for-all. But I used to listen to other, like Germany and stuff like that, and sometimes you'd get to a conference that would be in a different language. You could understand it, like Japan and stuff. But you'd have a whole group of people talking about stuff, and you're like, wow. And like you said, you'd learn a lot of cool stuff. It made it more interesting to branch out other than what you're normally, used to on like digital or DMR or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great idea. Because one thing for sure, I like to watch the, I have a Pi Star, I have a Zoom spot for DMR, and I just saw that earlier today somebody from Russia actually logged into the Central New Jersey DMR channel. Looks
How
like he
cool is
spoke
that?
for-
We've had a couple Italian stations and a couple of other stations log into our local reflector on D-Star, and I see it. Britain, UK stations, what are they, G0 or is that Greenland? I forget. There's G0 and G4 and some other ones. And they pop in. I was like, wow, how did you find us? Maybe they're doing the same thing. They might just be, jumping into a different reflector instead of listening to the same people that they ride to work with every day.
Yeah, I mean, I might do the same thing if I was in a different country. I would connect into America. Maybe I would connect into Britain, Ireland, Scotland, France, wherever. I know there's thousands of DMR channels. I'm also into the Yaesu thing. I used to be on America Link all the time. It seemed pretty, interesting. And I know there's like the TAC 310 on DMR. I listened in a little bit. Some of them got crazy where you would literally, I can't remember the name of the DMR channel, but it was like a worldwide comes to mind. And there was a guy that I think it was from Turks and Caicos, I want to say, and everybody was piling on trying to talk to him because I guess it's an unusual country to talk to. But
Yeah, but that wouldn't have excited me though on a digital mode. It would have been exciting on HF for me. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I can understand that because I know a lot of people think that digital is sort of. I've heard people use the term HF cheating, because it basically turns the radio into a voice over IP conversation. So it's not really radio, kind of.
Well, I don't think it's cheating, but here was my thing. So I remember, when I first started watching Bob's channel years ago, Bob, remember, he had the D-Star dongle before they had hotspots and repeaters. He'd plug this in your computer, a set of headphones and a mic, and you can get on D-Star, different reflectors and stuff. And then hotspots started hitting the market. But what bothered me I think it's great that we have an avenue to do that. If you're sitting in an airport, you're going to look like a weirdo on a radio in an airport. You know what I mean? So if you want to talk to your buddies on D-Star and stuff, you could do that over an app or they had the Peanut app a while ago and stuff and some other, VoIP digital conversions. My thing was, I remember being on like 30 Charlie, which is a reflector on D-Star. And I remember listening to a younger kid, and he just got his license, and he's on D-Start, and he's trying the long story short was, they were telling him, don't get a radio with RF, just stick to the app, fill the logbook, you'll never need to buy a radio or learn how to use an antenna. And that really bugged me when he said...
That's the worst.
Yes, that's the worst way to tell somebody, hey, you can work the world over the internet. Why would you learn how to build an antenna? No, wrong answer. And the kid was buying it. And I said, listen, I don't mean to step in here, and I never do. I said, but that's a really bad way as a newcomer to hobby who just jumped on here 2 weeks ago. That's the worst advice you can give. But I like the fact that you can get on with a hotspot and talk to your guys if you're out of town because your repeater or reflector is not close to you anymore. But to say, well, I'll just fill up the logbook, I'm done, I'll pet the dog, and I've worked every country in the world, and I've never learned how to build an antenna. That was my gripe about it,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. This hobby is about learning. It's about emergency communications. And to me, I came into this from that prepper perspective. I store a little bit of food. I store some radio equipment, and I just happened to fall in love with ham radio, and it became more than a tool. It became a hobby. It became kind of an obsession with me, kind of like you. And part of that whole deal is, well, to me, it's the communication. It's getting easier with yourself, talking to different people from different places, maybe that you don't know. And so talking about the radio is the great, easy segue in. And then, maybe talking about where they live, asking them questions about where they live, whatever. But I think, D-Star, DMR, and Fusion, all great ways to kind of bridge that gap. And if you don't have that antenna up, that first antenna right now, or you just got your license, any one of those modes is a great way to kind of get wet a little bit. You'll talk to guys from other parts of the world, other parts of the country, and you might strike up some friendships just on the radio. There's guys on D-Star that I talk to a couple of times a week, truckers from Canada who I haven't talked to this week, but I'm sure they're doing their part there to promote a little bit of freedom in Canada. And I'm one of those guys that I'll talk about politics. I don't care. I guess I got to clean up my language here because we're on shortwave radio. So I can't say exactly what I want, but there's all these different things. And then, as you get into it, you get your license, and 2 weeks later or a month later or whatever, you're gonna buy your first real radio, or you want to get into HF. And I'll tell you what, my first HF contact was on 10 meters. And I talked to a couple of guys in Florida, and I was living in California at the time. And I thought, holy crap, this is the most unbelievable thing. There's no wires, there's no operators, there's nothing. I mean, just me from my antenna out to these guys in Florida, and I'm having a conversation with them. I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And I was a tech at the time. That got me hooked right there.
So go ahead, Jeff.
I'm sorry. So I'm not against getting a general and then getting, I don't know, like an ICOM 7100 or whatever it is, and then playing around. That's probably one of the reasons why I didn't take the test, was because I was afraid I'd go buy the radio.
Well, I'll tell you what. Don't be afraid of that. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in this hobby. I'm just telling you right now.
If you're just tuning in, Jeff has bought several radios from Bob's YouTube videos, so you're already making him spend money.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You guys out there make me spend money, because now I'm buying radios that I don't need. It's because I got to do reviews on this stuff. I got to keep up with all these other YouTubers.
It's hard, man. I that's why I figured I don't call it competition. We're all friends. All the YouTubers know each other. I'm going to see them at Orlando and stuff. But some of the other guys have way more access and more knowledge on radios than I do. And like Josh is big. And Josh and Jason and K8MRD radio, Ham Radio 2.0 Jason, and Ham Radio Crash Course Josh, they're big into Parks on the Air. And I did my very first Parks on the Air activation with them at Montesano State Park on the top of the mountain in Huntsville, Alabama, for the Huntsville Ham Fest. I thought that was fun. But, everybody in YouTube's got their own thing to do in this hobby, their own way of putting it in. That's why I always said there's nobody that's doing it the right way. Bob has an approach of stuff, and he's got the perfect landscape out there to do stuff, portable stuff, out there in God's country in Idaho. Me, I have more ideas than I have time. I can't ever find a time to do this, but it's easier for me to make a podcast. So that's why I figured I'm not going to quit the YouTube. I'm just adding to it to try to spread the knowledge. But one thing, here's a fun fact for a sneak peek. My next video coming up in a couple days is going to be, this is the topic of the video, is I'm only a technician class, right? Because everybody that I've met lately, Winter Field Day was a good example. I met somebody and I said, so I always ask, so what's your story? What do you do with radio? What's your favorite mode? This and that. And they always, a lot of times say, I'm only a tech, man. I got to upgrade. No, there's a lot of stuff you can do as a technician class. There's no need to rush to be a general. And people have asked me, why am I an extra after a year, Eric? And you've been doing this since 2004 and you're still a general. I don't have a need to rush to extra. I really don't. When I run out of stuff to do and I get bored, I'm going to go for the extra to give me some more band privileges on 40 and 80, and I'll have more things to do. But as a tech, Jeff, do you find yourself feel like you're constrained, like you don't have enough to do as a tech, or there's so many things you can do to keep you busy in this hobby as a technician?
No, I think with the digital modes, I don't. I've been licensed now, going on 3 years. With the digital modes, there's no. I can talk anywhere, really.
What have you done anything with 10 meters or 6 meters DX on 10 meters and 6 as a tech?
No.
That's something you got to get into because Bob was just talking about that. 10 meters is by far my favorite band too. I have more logged contacts in 10 meters and probably 6 than I do any other band on HF, and 6 is VHF. But man, it's coming up to that time for those listening. If you're a tech or you're just getting into the hobby or you're wanting to study for your license, think of this. If you just start with a tech and take it slow, you could get a 10-meter radio. You can get an all-mode radio. You can get an ICOM 7300, and it'll always be in that radio with different modes, and you'll only be able to use the bands that you can use, but you got CW privileges and other portions as a tech. You have HF, sideband, and CW, and digital, PSK, and RIDI, slow scan TV on 10 meters. Imagine, exchanging photos over HF to a station in Asiatic Russia on 10 meters. That is exciting, and a lot of people, I think, are missing that as a technician, there's so much to do. There's satellites, like you said, Jeff, digital modes, even up into the microwave if you really want to do microwave stuff. So that's interesting. Let me touch on Matt here as I look at the list, and if you're just tuning in, thank you for listening. This is episode 3 on the HamRadioConcepts podcast, and again, I have a smile on my face talking to some people here that have watched some of our channels here, and they emailed and reached out and said, yeah, I could talk about something, and I said, let's just send it. Let's just see where it goes. And I really enjoy just talking, and if you have any ideas and you want to educate us, we could do this over and over with roundtables. Once we get Bob's Echo fixed, we could do this on any topic. You pick it, we'll talk about it. But you can find this on Apple Podcast or iHeartRadio or Deezer or Audible. Listen to it at work, on the way home to work or from work. Listen to it when your wife's yelling at you, and just go park yourself in the back room and just put the earphones in and pretend you don't exist for an hour, Something to do and listen to and maybe learn. And WRMI shortwave on AM, traditional radio, 9.395 megahertz facing North America, 5.950 megahertz facing North Africa and Europe. And send WRMI a thank you for letting me buy these slots and give them a signal report and tell them what you think of the programming. Tell them, hey, I really like this. Keep this on, because I hope they don't get somebody rolling there and want to buy everybody's time slots. Matt, VK2MLB. So in Australia, what do you think? Are you into digital modes like D-Star and DMR and Fusion? Are you interested? Are you into those?
No, really, the only digital anything that I've done is FT8. So any sort of WSJTX type modes over HF is really all that I've ever done. As far as digital stuff goes, I don't actually even own a radio that'll do anything digital, as I say, except for WSJTX type stuff. As far as DMR or something, it's a little bit beyond me at the moment, I think. We were talking about Echolink and stuff before. I think that's probably as far as I've gone. I've spoken on some Echolink repeaters. Sort of just local ones. That's about as close as I get to digital, I think, at the moment.
Well, is it prominent over there? Is there a certain? I mean, do you know people that have D-Star radios?
I definitely do. I've met a couple. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I don't think it's as big of a thing here. We've got a really good network of FM repeaters. I don't know what it's like over in the States. I know you guys do have a lot, and a lot of clubs operate them as well. But you can just about talk, anywhere in your state here in VK off, on your local repeaters. It all just bounces around so effectively. Again, I don't know. Maybe it is a bigger thing than I am sort of giving it credit for, like digital and like DMR and that sort of thing. Not something that I've really been into myself. Like anything, we're just talking about, will you ever run out of things to do in this hobby? So I really don't see how you can. Probably one of the biggest reasons that I haven't pushed at the moment to upgrade my license class is because there is still so much to do. And any operator will be into one part of the hobby more so than the other. I really enjoy tinkering and building and building things. Like, I had a background in electronics, which is sort of what got me into radio. So there's always something else to be tinkering with. There's always some other way of routing audio around, of patching, two different sets of things together, which is exactly what things like Echo Link are, right? Like, at the end of the day, yeah, if we want to talk to somebody voice over IP, we can just make a Skype call, or we can just get on a Zoom meeting. But that's not the point. The point is that we tinker with stuff, and we find different ways of mixing two, I don't know, communication methodologies, for lack of a better term, together to get something interesting to happen. Yeah, I could just pick up my cell and call somebody if I want to talk to them, but that's not what this is about. And knowing, particularly with HF, that you've spoke to somebody a really long way away with nobody's infrastructure except your own. We were talking about, some prepping and stuff before. If that's a road that you want to go down, then there's plenty to do there as well, because you're not reliant on anybody else's network or infrastructure to make it happen. You get yourself a battery and an HF radio, you're set. You can literally talk to anybody on Earth.
So I just picked up on that because I was going to talk about the FM situation here for a second in the U.S., but now you're talking about that. I might as well. This might be, for those who are interested. If you're interested, Jeff said he's into prepping. I know Bob is into prepping. I might we could do an episode one day about prepping, because I might as well be as far as radio goes. I don't have food stored. I don't have stuff. But when I think about it, I have. This is my exclusive thought process with what I have is, how can I maintain radio communications out of this backpack without nobody having to supply power, without me having to do anything? Can I send emails remotely from this battery-powered laptop, which will charge in my backpack from the solar panel that's on it? I might as well be a radio prepper, because I'm more into what happens, not when necessarily the grid goes down or a doomsday scenario, but in one of the videos, when I was talking about a hurricane preparedness guide, I made a pretty tasteless video at some points of watching people fist fight in the parking lot because they couldn't find water 8 hours before a hurricane, or people that were going to buy prepaid cell phones and saying, well, if my cell phone quits, I got a backup. That's like the worst decision in the world. But
dude, that was gold. That was freaking gold.
You remember that video, don't you?
I do. That was awesome.
Well, so that's what I'm saying. I would love to have an episode. If you're interested, email me, HamRadioConcepts@gmail.com. We'll talk about that and see what's in your emergency preparedness kit. Does it involve a radio? What's your emergency radio thing? I mean, I even got...
I'm going to challenge you.
Hold on. But wait. Before you challenge, listen. I even have hand crank dynamo chargers, hand crank dynamo weather radios, hand crank dynamo flashlights. I mean, I have it. And why am I not doing this prepper idea for radio? I might as well be.
Yeah, definitely. But I gotta challenge you here. Now, number one, I switched microphones. I'm back on the Yeti Blue. Is the echo gone?
Yeah, actually, it absolutely is. When I'm talking, I don't see it spiking. What do you think, Jeff and Matt?
I don't.
Yeah, definitely sounding a lot better than it was.
Okay, well then,
it's going to be a recurring theme of this podcast now, is just how much echo can we possibly get rid of. We're going to end up making a whole episode on just how to remove the echo from your
how to get rid of echo.
Yes. Well, see, behind the scenes here, as we were trying to set this up, behind the scenes was, now I was going from the free version to the pro version with my credit card in front of me, because they had an echo cancellation. Went to the trial version, it didn't work, and we were just out of options. But no, that actually sounds like I can't hear any more echo. So congratulations, Bob. If you're interested on the podcast, you can rewind back and enjoy at your leisure his audio echo, which will be available as a cataloged index episode here. But
absolutely. Hey, I gotta get back on subject here real quick.
Go ahead.
As far as prepping, as far as your radio prepping, and I think as ham radio operators, we're all kind of radio preppers. Everybody's got a go kit. Everybody's got a setup that they think is going to work for them come hell or high water. But I'll tell you what, without some food and water and some basic survival equipment, all that radio gear is just going to make a nice stash for somebody else to pick up off your dead body.
I didn't think of it that way, Bob. What good is the radio if you haven't had water in 3 days, right?
Hey, you know what? That's the last time you'll need the radio.
Well, yeah, that might be interesting. Jeff, on the prepping here, just why? Because again, this episode's going wherever it wants. What do you think about what's your most valuable asset for prepping? I mean, what if it's not radio? What is it?
I think it's I have different kinds of food. I've bought MREs. I've bought we just do simple stuff like if I always explain it this way to people. So let's say you use 1 can of tuna a week, and you have 1 tuna fish sandwich. You know, buy 2 cans every week. So this week you've used 1, but you have 1 as a backup. Now next week you go shopping again, you buy 2 more. Now you have 2 as a backup, and you've used 1. So now your stocks are increasing. Very, very. It's slow. So you're not going. Well, near me, it's ShopRite. You're not going to ShopRite and you're buying all the paper towels all at once. You're buying 1 more roll. It's a lot of that. But food is more important than anything, really.
That's a real good way to do it. Is you don't think of it as, hey, I got to run out and I got to buy a year's worth of food and I need it tomorrow, because you're going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars doing that. But if you do it Jeff's way, it'll take some time, but you'll build up, and before you know it, you got a month's worth of food sitting there in your house. To me, it's a combination of lead therapy, survival food, water filtration systems, some other things. I like some tactical advantages. So I've got night vision. I've got some, I'm a flashlight and a knife whore to the max.
I've seen those videos, man. You got all kinds of hey, I'll tell you, I did check out some of those, the Olight flashlights, and a lot of people said, oh, get this brand, get that brand. Listen, I learned what the difference is between a Dollar General flashlight, a Home Depot flashlight, and a professional flashlight. And let me tell you, those things have not quit yet. That's a great way to keep the grandkids busy. I was throwing them in the pool. They were diving for them. I mean, I can see now why these preppers have flashlights like that. And especially if you're doing ham radio like Parks in the Air or overnight or something. Man, who wants to go banging on a flashlight with D batteries in it, You got to have these things. They make them in lanterns. They make them in flashlights. They make them in ball cap things. I see the real reason now. And when I watched some of your videos before, Bob, I was like, so what? It's a flashlight. And then once I touched one and realized, I get it.
That's true. You know what? I used to buy the cheapest stuff I could find. And then you start figuring out that the cheapest stuff you could find, you get what you pay for. It breaks. It doesn't work right. And then you go and you buy something really nice. You buy one and you go, wow, what a difference. I mean, I've got a little tiny Olight, and I don't even know how to explain an Olight. It's a manufacturer, but they make top quality tactical lights and survival lights. I've got one, it's like 2 inches long, and it puts out more lumens, and lumens are how bright it gets at night. It'll put out the same amount of lumens as the $100 stream light. They're just insane. I can't say enough about those Olights.
Some of them have now, some of these lights coming out now have sensors, proximity sensors, that when you get close to your hand or something, that like the lens, that it'll dim it down, because some of these are so bright with so many lumens, man. You hold that to your hand for 5 seconds, it's going to burn.
Yeah.
And here's your secret code for additional entries on Bridgecom's Almost Spring Ham Shack giveaway. Guys, over $4,400 of HF, VHF, and UHF gear that they're giving away, plus services to program all your radios and more. Kind of like the Hot Summer Nights giveaway. Use the code CONCEPTS, CONCEPTS, on their website. The link is in the description of this podcast, and you could have additional entries by subscribing and following the podcast to give additional chances to win all of this amazing gear. We're talking the Xiegu G90 HF transceiver, all mode 20 watt HF radio with built-in antenna tuner, all the accessories, and even a analog UHF repeater and duplexer. I mean, a hat, antennas, handhelds, mobile radios, hotspots, and more. Use the code CONCEPTS, CONCEPTS, and here's your chance to get additional giveaway entries, courtesy of Bridgecom Systems. Yeah, Matt, anything you got to say about a flashlight, Matt? What? Go ahead.
I've heard it said.
Welcome to the flashlight show.
Say what you want about mag lights, but if you can't carry a self-defense weapon for whatever reason, a mag light is a self-defense weapon with built-in plausible deniability.
Absolutely.
It'll get hurt when you get hit with one of those.
Well, I'll tell you what, when I was a cop, that was a thing. You know, you carried that 5 D cell mag light, and at night you didn't carry a baton, which is, you know, the be good stick, because you got too much stuff on your belt. So you had that 5 cell mag light, and that thing came in handy in more ways than one.
It's a lot of weight to have swinging up over your head, right?
It is, but it works.
Bob?
As a flashlight, I can't really speak to them because I've never used one myself. The one thing I absolutely cannot live without, though, is my head torch. I've got a LED Lenser is the brand, LED head torch with it's got a culminating lens on the front. You can take it from a spot right out to a big wide flood. I have had that thing for 10 years now at least, and it has not skipped a beat.
Interesting. I'm looking that up right now as we speak.
So
see if I can find the model number even.
You know what's interesting is have you seen these guys? So back to prepping here with radio for a second. I've watched some guys on videos where they take prepping and radio put together and they go out for like 2 days for a de-expedition or something, and they live off MREs and everything, like no power, no they have radio, they have solar, they have batteries, and they have no food. Like they're not doing what I would do and go to the work at a place with a radio and then enjoy a meal from somewhere at night and then go back out. These people are like getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, or they're rowing their boat through a frozen river in North Asia, and they're making their fire to cook the food that they just caught, and they're playing radio. Those are I guess what you call survivalists, not preppers.
They're preppers. They're taking it to a different level, and they're training. And that's the other thing, is you need to know how to use your equipment. And that goes back to the radio thing. And one of my biggest bitches with a lot of the DMR radios. And you see how this is like the World Wide Web. We just spiral back and forth into all kinds of crap. But back to the DMR radios. I don't know how many times I've heard guys say, oh yeah, one of my neighbors or one of my friends programmed my DMR radio for me, built me a code plug and everything. And that just drives me up the wall. That is a huge pet peeve of mine, is because when things go bad, when you end up in a new environment, or you're off grid and you can't get to your favorite DMR repeater, and you need to go radio to radio with somebody, and you can't make that radio work on its own, that's the biggest reason I tell people, get your ham radio license, get that tech license, so you could play with that thing, so you can learn how it works, so you can learn how that Baofeng works. and how to program it, because they're perishable skills, just like shooting, just like being able to make food, just like being able to stay alive during a hurricane.
Great way you said that, because here's a fun fact as well. I don't, and this drives people nuts. I don't program radios. I never really got into. I've never had one HF radio in my life that had a frequency programmed in, and all the handhelds I have. And this is the same way for my phone. This is another good skill to have. I don't. I have contacts because I have so many people at work that I have to call. But when I go to dial my wife, I dial her number. When I dial my mom, I have a habit. I don't scroll through. You'll see someone with their phone, and they're just swiping and swiping to look for that person's number. When they lose their phone or it breaks, forget it. They cannot get a hold of the people they need to get a hold of. Now, the same thing migrates from my mentality there to ham radio. All my handhelds, whether it was a Baofeng years ago or all the way up to the Kenwood D74 or whatever I've used, I always end up typing it in and going to shift negative for the repeater, to CTCSS tone 107.2, and I dial it up because I could be anywhere and I don't have a RT Systems file or I don't have a code plug, and I could dial in repeaters right there. But like you said, that I've heard a lot of people, so they come up to me and they'll go at a field day or Hamfest, they'll hand me the radio. Here, my friend dropped. That's how I played with. That's how I first played with this ID52. Not the first time, but I played with another one, that new ICOM radio at Winter Field Day. And a gentleman walked up. He said, "They told me to come talk to you." I said, "Okay, what can I help you with?" He says, "My name's this and this. I moved in the area. He just programmed my radio with his memory card. Now what do I do?" Well, okay, so all the frequencies are in there, but he doesn't know how to even go between the frequencies or how to change from FM to D-Star, or how to put it in dual receive mode or whatever. So unfortunately, ham radio licenses won't tell you or teach you how to operate the radio. And that's where, if you're new to ham radio listening, that's where all of us come up on YouTube, like Bob and me and Jason and Mike and all them, because especially Ham Radio Crash Course, he does a lot of stuff on Baofeng radios. And he teaches you how to program them and how to go into different modes and menus, because that's how you learn. Is fortunately for us on YouTube, thank you for watching, but I hope that you've learned something from that, because they don't tell you in a license manual, hey, okay, now you're going to be a tech, you can talk on here, and here's how to program your radio. No, because by the time you take your license, 3 years later, there's 25 new radios out, and you don't go to a school. Maybe they should have something like that, a school on an official class on how to use a radio. When a new radio comes out, you go once a month, you pay your fees, and you go, hey guys, look, new radios, the vendor sent us these. This is how you program and get familiar with them in case you're interested. Like a ham radio university locally for how to operate certain radios that come out. That'd be an interesting idea.
Ham Radio College.
Ham Radio University, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we're at 52 minutes here, so I'll keep it to an hour, but here's what we'll do. If you're just listening, or you first of all, I want to thank a couple people. We're going to go around and let everybody just give one thing that they want to say on the podcast before we wrap this up here. First and foremost, my sponsors, HamRadioPrep.com. Just as we're talking about this, that is a sponsor of mine. They help me out a lot with making videos and keeping the lights on and making it worth it. And I believe in them, and a lot of friends and family that I know are using that to get their license. And they also gave us a code, EricPodcast20. If you type that in at their course online, you get 20% on every course you buy, 20% off. But there's interactive videos, there's quizzes, and they kind of understand a little more than a paper manual, showing you how to call CQ on a video with some graphics and show you this is what you would expect to do when you get on your radio. So thanks to my sponsors at Ham Radio Prep, and also my patrons. Bob, I know you have people on Patreon, and I never thanked them enough, but guess what? Patreon, you guys on Patreon are putting your hard-earned donations to work, paying for the bill at the shortwave and this echo cancellation that I'm going to have to buy on the software and the podcast platform. So thank you, everyone who is subscribed or donating on patreon.com/HamRadioConcepts. I'm sorry all these years I haven't thanked you enough, but I'm going to try to do more this year. I'm telling you, I appreciate it. Jeff, let's go to you. You got a couple minutes. What did you think about this podcast being on here? What do you want to tell people that are either listening on the top of a mountain on shortwave, or they're new licensed, or they've been doing this 60 years and they're listening to you on this podcast. What do you got to say?
So I just wanted to say, one of the things I can't thank all of the ham radio YouTubers enough for honestly teaching really how to program some of the radios I've bought through the years. I started out with the Baofeng. I moved on to Yaesu. Then I got the Anytone, thanks to Bob, because Bob said if you have one radio, you have no radios. So, 2 is 1, 1 is none. That's being in IT, I know that very well. So again, I can't thank, Ham Radio Crash Course, you, Eric. I've learned a lot from you, of course. Don't want to leave you out. And Bob, of course, for all of the videos of learning so much about the radios and just radio in general. And so one of the things that I programmed my Anytone for is I have it divided into like 6 zones. One's called the home zone, and that basically is like 2 or 3 repeaters in my area, plus 70 centimeter call and 2 meter call. Then I have it on NOAA for weather. So all of the weather stations, depending on where you are, you could flip it to, to get the weather. I have a zone specifically for my hotspot for DMR, and I have all of the simplex calling stations. I think there's like 8. Then I have a municipal zone, so I could scan through my local police and fire, etc. And then I've always wanted to try and talk to somebody on the space station, and I have a zone for that too.
Another video coming up on some space station work, so you're gonna enjoy that.
Yeah. So so just one of the reasons why I reached out to you also, Eric, was that in addition to having like an idea and kind of want to get involved in the podcast and sort of paying you back for whatever you've taught me.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. But listen, before I move to Matt, one of your first topics was, what do you talk about in the radio? Jeff, you just talked about all kinds of stuff that I'm interested in learning more, and other people may have not known about prepping and stuff. For those who listen since the beginning of the podcast, right there. Do you have to talk about radio? No, you can talk about flashlights on ham radio. You can talk about whatever you want, and there's places for it. There's people that don't want to do that. There's people that just want to contact and move on. But Jeff, right there, just seeing that or for anybody, if you're not, if you're nervous to get on the radio, don't be, because there's people out here just like us, and we're just humans, and we're just communicating over RF. But thanks, Jeff, for being on here with us. And Matt, you got like a minute and a half. Matt, I'm going to put you to the test here. A minute and a half. Go.
How much time can I possibly fill up? Okay, what I'm going to take away from this straight away is I need to go and read up more about DMR. Because that is the one thing that I felt entirely out of my depth talking about just earlier, and now I want to know more about what it's about. Look, we've spoken a lot so far about the different aspects of the hobby, and if there's anything that I can say or encourage people to do, it's to go and branch out and look at something that potentially you haven't spent a lot of time reading about or watching videos about. There is a lot of content out there, like Eric, guys like yourself are just pumping content out constantly with a new aspect or a review on a new piece of gear. There's a lot out there. Branch out. Go and read what else is out there, because I guarantee there's something that you haven't even heard about before.
Absolutely, yep. And Matt, I hope one day down the road we could all, if once we get this figured out, we're gonna have a huge roundtable. Maybe we'll do a once a month live one or something or whatever. And if you ever wanted to come in and you hear me doing a 2-hour episode and you got nothing to do that day, please jump in. That'd be great to have you guys. You guys all sound like you're versed in one thing or another, and that's what's cool. You'll never know who you meet on ham radio. Everybody's got their own thing. And with that, we're gonna leave it to Bob here to wrap it up with a minute, Bob. K6UDA, if you're not familiar, go to YouTube, type in K6UDA radio. You'll see him on YouTube. And he's got some pretty interesting videos, and I just love the way he does it. Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, you know what? Thanks for having me. Number one. Number two, yeah, if you're thinking about getting your license, do it. Just study, get an app on your phone. My biggest thing is get your license, then start learning about radio. That's when you'll really learn. You'll be invested in the hobby. I want to thank all my patrons, all 18 or 20 of them. Thank you guys. This is something that, guys like me and Eric, that we do to give back to the community. And I love making the videos. I love making fun and interesting videos that, might have a little bit more appeal to everybody, as opposed to just the ham radio operators. With that, I know I've just about hit a minute there. And back to you, Eric. Thanks for having me. And we'll catch you guys on K6UDA radio.
Wow, he was 5 seconds past a whole minute, guys. Could you believe that? He almost timed it pretty good. Anyways, the episode is pretty much over. But hey, thanks everybody listening. Again, share the podcast with people. As I said in the original one, we never know where this is going to go. This is new to me. I'm late to the party of the podcast, but I hope everybody at least gain some sort of something from this podcast, or maybe I'm just not trying hard enough, because I want everybody to have something easy to listen to, something a little bit different than showing you a new radio on a YouTube video, but also that you can learn something. And it's family friendly, and except when Bob comes on here, then I gotta hit the mute button over him. But no, Bob's cool. I love Bob. Thanks everybody for listening, and tune in next weekend. I'll probably have a podcast update about the Orlando Hamcation that's coming up. Hamfest is a really cool place to experience if you're new to ham radio, so make sure you go there. And Jeff, Matt, Bob, 7-3, everybody, go ahead and sign off, and then I'll close it out.
7-3.
7-3. Cheers, guys.
And 7-3 from K6UDA.
This is KJ4YZI with HamRadioConcepts. More podcasts are on the way. 7-3.